Let's call this meeting to order. This is the Livingston Parish Ordinance meeting for Tuesday, October 26, 2021 at 6 p.m. Who's running? Is it Lauren? You here? Would you call the roll,
Yep.
please?
Mr. Harris.
Here.
Mr. Talbert.
Here.
Mr. King.
Here.
Mr. Girlinghouse.
Here. Item 2, old business. A, review impact fee ordinance. I'm assuming Mr. Mack, are you here?
He is not. I actually made a significant amount of changes, and in the packet that I just sent you guys is kind of like a question and answer from the last ordinance meeting that we talked about this, and I added a lot of information. And because we have a back-to-back meeting weeks, he is okay if y'all want to just look it over and then table it till next week.
Well, I was, they discussed it, what they wanted to do in pretty good detail at the Gravity 8 meeting. I think it was last week. There was a few of us there, but yeah, there's some things they want us to do, but this is Mr. Max. I'm going to let him carry this, so I would prefer just deferring it until next week.
Okay, now Tracy, there's a possibility next week if you or I or Bubba have a problem, we have a quorum issue because Scooter's going to be out of pocket for the next couple for this meeting.
So it'd be me, you, and Bubba. I mean, you be okay?
Yeah, we just all got to be committed to making whatever we got to do so that we can do whatever. You know what I'm saying? I just want to just want to be aware that we can defer it, but we're going to have to be diligent in making the meeting because Mr. Keen's going to be sitting by the campfire, resting his feet for after walking around looking for something that ain't there. So.
Well, it'll still be lunch hour whenever you have a meeting over there.
Well, that's fine. Look, I mean, I try to make them all, so you know. But if we'll be here, I think it'll be fine. We can just have something
Ahead of time too.
I wasn't planning on being here tonight, but they got changed.
All right. Well, we'll plan to go ahead with it. If not, we'll it'll be what it's going to be. We have them once a week. We're not really supposed to have one anyway next week. So if something happens. But I think we'll just plan to do it next Tuesday. Item B, review load limits on parish roads ordinance. I know that we had talked about this in detail. Earlier we thought maybe the requirements were being a little stringent. Did you have any further thoughts on that? Anyone, Mr. Talbert?
Oh, I don't know. This was generated by DPW or planning or whatever? Did they come back? We talked about the questions with respect to what the state ordinance was or state law was with respect to weight limits. Are we going to try to?
They haven't with me. They haven't with me. No, sir. They have not. They have not contacted me on it.
What about Ms. White? Have they been back in touch with you?
No, that's why you don't have an ordinance. So this is probably good to be deferred to.
Okay.
Okay. Item C, review requested compliance ordinance changes. I'm sorry guys, I don't have the packet in front of me, and I couldn't get my laptop, so I can't double down, and I couldn't get it printed out either. So
Tracy, I'll help you. One of them is the 8 inches in height of the grass.
Oh, yes.
Did we determine that we had talked about 8 being too much, but I mean, we could leave it at 8 and let them, do what they want to do. What y'all's feeling on that?
I think they had requested 8, correct?
Right.
And I don't know. I generally thought 8 was. I mean, any one of us. I mean, if I miss a couple, it rains a couple of bit, 8 inches ain't a lot, but I don't know. It currently stands at what? Does it currently stand at
there is no height limit or the height minimum and or maximum. So consequently, they really don't know. That's what they want to give teeth. I thought about after our meeting. Look, nothing happens overnight. When compliance goes in and tries to give you a letter and then give you a period of time to do it, So if you think about it, if your intent is to cut your grass and it rained a few weeks and you got over 8 and your neighbor complains, if compliance comes out and sees you, you're going to cut it anyway.
Yeah.
So I think the deal is that those people who have no intention of cutting their grass,
Yeah.
if we let them start early, then it might not be 6 feet when it comes time to be addressed. You know, it might. You follow what I'm saying, Tracy?
Yeah, and I also think that, Mr. Keene had alluded to this, and I agree with him. It's not like they're going to go out there with a ruler. I mean, they're not going. I don't think they're going to be over the top with it. They're going to go out to the people where the grass is,
It's kind
2 feet, a foot and a half, or something like that. So
Sure.
I'm okay with pushing it forward like this. I mean, if it's easily changed, if that happens, which I don't foresee that happening, so I'm okay with it. How about
I'm okay with 8 inches.
So I'll make a motion for the change, which is, it's just the inserting of the word, exceeding 8 inches in height is all we're doing when we talk about grass.
I'll second
Making
that.
that motion.
Yeah, I'm making a motion to recommend that to the full council.
Okay.
Yeah.
Motion by Mr. Talbot, second by Mr. Harris, right? All in favor, say aye.
It don't
And the next, Tracy, the next part was a different ordinance, and it talks about abandoned motor vehicles, and there's a list of things that it needs to match, and then they say, or with consent of the owner or person in control of the property for more than 90 days in a single 12-month period. So basically, sometimes the person that owns the car is not there, and you can't meet all these little qualifications that need to happen, to determine it's inoperable and unattended. So I think, that they've just added this so it gives them a few more ways to address the problem.
It's in conjunction with the ordinance where they say where you have to fence it in, and if you have, because I know people that have several vehicles. So I mean, I'm okay with it.
Okay.
You guys?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm okay with it.
All right. I need a motion to motion by
second.
Mr. King.
Yeah.
Second by Mr. Harris. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All right. Is there anything else on there on C, Gary?
No, that was it on the review of compliance ordinance changes. That was it. We're going to send both of those recommendations forward to the full council.
All right. Item D, review of regulation prohibiting parking vehicles on parish roads. I think we had talked about this. And essentially, remember, we made the ordinance saying you couldn't park. It become problematic in these garden. It's problematic, period, but it's problematic in these garden style neighborhoods where we just felt that if they need to get emergency vehicles in there like fire trucks, and people are parked in the road, you can't get in there. They can't get into. They wouldn't be able to get to the fire hydrants. And to me, and more importantly, but just as important for certain, is the fact that you lose your line of sight in those neighborhoods. Everything's so tight knit in those things, in those type subdivisions where there could be a kid just playing, and just you can't see them cross the yard. Most of those yards aren't very deep anyway, and then they just run out in front of you. I just think as a safety issue, they wanted to add to it because people are parking their trailers, and by that I mean like their tow trailers in the road, and the ordinance is not addressing that. And so I think we should put it into where you can't park your trailer. I don't know how we want to word that. I mean, anything, a wheeled vehicle or anything that requires a license plate. I don't know. I mean, because a lot of times people are parking them on the sidewalks too, which is forcing people who walk on the sidewalk, the kids that ride their bikes, out into the road. This is an issue, I think, that, if you just park in the driveway, and if you don't have room in your driveway, I don't know. I mean, I think that, this is an adjustment we need to make. You can't park your trailers, if they, you have a trailer with four-wheelers on it or lawnmower equipment. I mean, you can't park it in the road. Any other comments? You guys have anything to add?
I don't know. It's kind of hard for me to.
Hello?
You there? Can you hear me?
I'm here, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of hard for me to grasp this because there's so many places that parking is supposed to be on the road, and it's, I don't know. I do agree it's a safety issue. Yeah, everywhere in Baton Rouge and New Orleans, there's parking on the road.
Well,
yeah, but we're not Baton Rouge and New Orleans.
I agree. But
Thank you.
Also, in these garden style subdivisions, don't we require parking areas?
Yeah.
Well, we do now, but there's we do in certain ones.
And just like in the apartments and things like that,
Sure.
Well,
I mean,
I don't know. It just seems like a bit of an overreach. I do agree it's a safety issue, but is it a problem that we need to address?
I think, yes.
Well, here's the deal.
Look, the road is for driving, in my opinion.
I agree.
So, go ahead, Mr. Gary.
I mean, but we say no person shall stop, park, or leave standing any vehicle. The legal definition of a vehicle includes a trailer. So I'm not sure that we need to adjust that. I mean, so if a legal definition of a vehicle includes a trailer, is there some other part of this ordinance we want to address? We want to stop all parking on the street, or are we just gonna?
Was that nobody could park on the street ever? And
well, I mean, look, that's really not. I mean, I'm gonna be honest with you. That's not realistic. I mean,
that's what I mean.
If we want to limit, if we want to talk about, restricting ride, if we make it a public hazard, we've got to define what that is, or we've got to, define, if a street's so wide, so much of it's got to continue to be passable. I mean, at my house, I have an open ditch in the front, and by definition of our ordinance, I can't enclose my ditch. So typically, if I have company over, I mean, I've got a pretty big driveway, but it still holds about 7 or 8 cars, and that's it. So if people park on the road, they cannot get their vehicle entirely off the road and stay out of the ditch. So it's unrealistic to think that the most people, I could have 7 or 8 cars in my house and that's it, because I have a big driveway. I mean, there's a lot of driveways that don't hold 7 or 8 cars. So I think it's unrealistic to say that you can't park on the street, but I think that you have to be able to define, what the hazard is. And so I think that's just my opinion. I think we can toughen the ordinance if we need to, but we cannot make it so that you cannot. I mean, because typically, go ahead, Mr. Hare.
I think maybe we should check with what the state police have in store, because of I know in the past, if a vehicle was parked on the side of a state road and didn't have lights on it, and somebody come through there at night and hit it, well, it was a person that hit the vehicle. It was their responsibility, their fault. Don't ask me how they came up with that, but that's something we need to look at.
Well, if you read the ordinance, it says no person shall stop, park, or leave standing any vehicle, and then it goes on, but in every event, an unobstructed width of the street or public way opposite of standing vehicles shall be left for the free passage of other vehicles. So it's saying you can't, and then it's saying what you got to do.
No, Scooter, if you finish reading it, it says you cannot stop, park, or leave standing any vehicle, whether intended or unattended, upon the paved or main traveled part of any street or public way when it is practicable to stop, park, or so leave such vehicle it's like
Off of the street.
If there's no other alternative, you can do that as long as you leave the main portion open. Is how I read it. Now I'm not an attorney, and it looked like when I just read it, I got confused for a second. So I'm not sure.
Me too.
You think we should bring this before Mr. Moody? And
I think we have, but it's been several years, so.
Well, I can't remember that far back, Scooter.
Well, I mean, here's the deal. I mean, we basically need to figure out what is the minimum width that you can have of passage of a vehicle, and we need to maintain the minimum width on whatever road exists.
Right.
And then, we could put a graduated scale in there depending upon how wide a road is, but we need to at least maintain a minimum width, and we need to define whether it's, I don't know, plausible to get off the road. I'm just telling you that there are certain subdivisions, because of the time frame and when they were built and whatever, that it's not practical. However, there are subdivisions that people as a routine park a bunch of vehicles on the road, and it is a hazard. It's a hazard because it's crowded. It's not a hazard because you can't pass. And so I think we've got to figure out, what our intent is. Are we trying to make it safe, or are we trying to make it convenient? And I think that's where we got to figure out what we're trying to do with this and move forward. But so far as trailers, I think the legal definition of vehicle ought to cover trailers.
You think that's covered?
We ought to ask we could ask the parish attorney for clarification whether a vehicle actually includes a trailer or not. I think, did Tracy get disconnected?
Yeah, he's asking to get back in right now.
Okay, Scooter. So, I mean, you kind of got the meeting right. Well, here he comes.
Yeah. So I think we need to ask Mr. R to get on, because he is the one that brought this to us to begin with.
Did it come from the sheriff's office, Tracy?
Yes.
Okay.
So what were their concerns? I mean, I didn't speak to them directly.
I think that primarily that people are just using, by the way, I'm sorry, I don't know what happened. I got dumped there. I had to Lauren had to let me back in the door of the Zoom meeting. I think what people are doing is they have people that have trailers, if they got 4-wheels, and they're just using it at a parking spot. It's like part of their driveway. They're just, using it like it's their own personal spot. And, I think it's being problematic in these garden home type, like subdivisions, because the roads aren't, that wide. And look, my biggest issue with it is the safety reason. I know you lose your line of sight right there, and if kids they run out there, they get in the way, and it also is problematic if they have to get, if you get a fire truck in there. This is just the kind, to me, it's in the end. I understand that some of these houses don't have a lot of parking area, but you have to determine whether a road is for driving on and not parking on. Now, I think if it's attended, you pull up to the front to drop something off. I don't necessarily have a problem for that if you're going to be, situational. The waiter guy comes and pulls up, and you got people at your house. He gets out and delivers, gets back in the car and leaves. I just have a problem with like, hey, this is my other parking spot. I'm gonna park here. No, it's the road. And that's really what my overall concern is. Now, how we address it, I don't know, but
so the guy cut your grass, he's gonna be there an hour. That ain't what you're looking at.
Exactly.
Okay.
I think maybe what we ought to do is, my opinion is, Tracy, what you'd like to see happen.
Yeah.
With respect, let's send this to Mr. Moody's office and kind of talk about what we would like to see out of this ordinance, and then see what recommendation he has with respect. I mean, because state law is going to kind of supersede some of this stuff, and just figure out what's going on right now. What we can do, is there a minimum? Can we restrict somebody from, parking on the road if that's the only place that it's practical for them to park, or if we have a minimum distance, or can we just say you can't park on it, period? And then, and let him make that evaluation, because he's ultimately going to have to defend the law at some point in time, since, you know, as a representative of the district attorney's office, I mean, they're eventually going to prosecute this thing. So let's make sure that if we write this law, that they feel comfortable with it. And I mean, if trailers are concerned, then we just need to ask them, is vehicles covering that? If not, then we can add the word, you know, to the deal. If we want to have a different set of rules for trailers, we can ask them, is that possible? Because typically, here's the deal. If I have guests over and they're parking their car, you know, for a 2 or 3 hour period and they're leaving a tire on the street, that's one thing. But if a trailer is being parked every day, that's something else entirely. That's not necessarily, you know, that is somebody's parking spot. So, you know, we could have a different.
Yeah.
You know,
look, I agree. You know, if for like at Christmas time and things like that, and people are having parties or at night, there are certain situations where, you know, there's going to be multiple cars on the road, even like at Halloween. Sure. I mean, you know, those are kind of one-offs, you know, but I don't think, you know, I don't believe, and I know they wouldn't, the sheriff's department wouldn't just go have a field day writing tickets. I think, you know, ultimately what I'd like to see is you can't use it as an extension of your driveway 24/7, you know.
Let's send that to Moody, and let's send that to Moody's office and see what he comes up with.
Okay. I agree with that, and I'll give Mr. Moody a call too, and just to see how he feels about that, just off the top of his head too.
Okay.
All right. So, anything else?
I think that's good on that.
Okay. Item 3: new business review and discussion on recommendations of ordinances. Anybody have anything they want to move forward with?
You know, if you remember, we talked about the zoning ordinance is going to be a 2-part deal. I think there's an item on the agenda Thursday night. I think, I don't know if Eddie's coming or somebody else from Alvin Fairman's office will come and going to give us a little update on where they are with definitions and some of that stuff.
Yeah, I'd actually called them and requested that. Just come give us an update and let us know where they're at. I know that he had requested, just as a way to make things quicker, to get all of us a detailed copy of our district as it exists today, you know, and then you, as the councilman for that respective district, make the recommendations that you want. You don't have to go over the whole thing per se, but you can be like, well, I know I probably want this to be this, and this, and then we can give that back to them and they can incorporate it into what they're doing. So it'll save them time, and, you know, and it'll save you having to go back and forth with them, even if you just have a few recommendations. So, and I think that's more lines what we're gonna try to discuss on that, and probably a few other things. I'll let him brief you all on. But that's what I got for that. Hey.
I got someone we talked to about. It came up today in a phone call, and I don't know how we really need to address it. I think what they're going to do meets the intent of the law. It doesn't meet the letter. If you remember, we used to have a 5-foot side buffer on houses, and we measured it from slab to the property line, and property line to the slab, and we realized the eaves.
Yeah, the eaves. Yes.
The eave came within that 5 feet. So basically, we went to a 6-foot setback and a 7-foot setback, depending upon the square footage of the house. The bigger the house, the hotter the fire. Therefore, you had to go to 7 foot. And with the 7 foot, you actually would get more than 10 feet between eave to eave, eave fascia board to fascia board. At 6 foot, you were still under 10 foot fascia board to fascia board. There was a little subdivision that started a design process prior to the change in the ordinance, but didn't meet with planning until after the change in the ordinance, and the ball kind of got dropped. They have now built a subdivision with the intent of building certain size houses. I got a phone call today to want to know, is there a provision in the ordinance that if you build the house without an eave overhang, you know what I'm talking about, a flat-sided deal, then you would actually have 10 foot between the houses. Is there a way to, change the lot size? I don't know. We need to take that into consideration, but basically it's a situation where it's really, I don't know if it's an engineer mistake or whether it's a developer mistake, not communicating, but basically they had the intent of building a particular size. They had lots of, slabs of particular widths, and they built lots of another width, which, had 5 feet on each side. And now they realize that they have built a whole subdivision of which they can't build what they want in. So they made the request, if they eliminated the eave and overhang on the property line side setback, could they go to a 5 foot deal, which in essence, we went to 6 and 7 because of the way it was measured, the way permitting measured. Instead of taking the eave and overhang into it, they went to the slab and measured. So a 5 foot setback in that particular situation, if there's no eave or overhang, still met the spirit of what the law was originally. So just be thinking about that. We've got a guy that's got a little issue and wants a little help, and we need to figure out if there's a way that we can, fix that law so that if you build a house without even overhang and you still allowed for 10 foot, does that solve that problem? So, we can take it up. We can take it up in, Tracy, are we going to have a meeting? Oh, he's going up. Was it the intent to have another meeting in next Tuesday? Lauren, was that his intent?
Yes.
I would like that maybe we could do a little research on that and see if there's a way, I'm not talking about changing the setback. I'm talking about if you specifically design a particular type of house like some zero lot line stuff that, that doesn't have even overhang, would that be acceptable to have a 5 foot setback? Because it still gives you 10 foot between the houses. Just food for thought. Be thinking about it over the week. I'm gonna make some inquiries with some people to see if it's, from an engineering point of view, and talk about and go talk to one of the fire chiefs that originally brought that to our attention, and see what their thought process is, and then I'll comment back to y'all next Tuesday.
Well, Gary, if you remember, we talked about that while we were working on that ordinance, and I think you even recommended, I can't remember for sure, that we would still have the 10 feet between there. So I don't think that.
Yeah, but I don't think that it didn't make it to the final draft. The final draft became simple, and it's a 6 and 7 foot setback, and the square footage is a change.
Sure.
And so, we didn't address if there was no even overhang, if we could have a 5 foot setback. So we need to figure out, from a public safety point of view and a fire department point of view, how they feel about that if we still maintain. Because if you remember, there was talk about changing this construction style on that side of the house to create, a fire barrier or a 2-hour firewall or whatever.
Yeah.
And so the question is, if we build a house without an even overhang and we still get the time, and we still get the distance, do we want to look at addressing that ordinance? Because it's going to require permitting to look at every lot with respect to what is the setback, plotted on there, what's a setback, and is there even overhang? And if there is an even overhang, then they got to have 6 or 7. But if there's none, then they can measure from the slab to the property line and have 5 feet. And
probably accomplish the same deal. So just food for thought, and we can talk about it next Tuesday. I'm going to try to do some research and like I said, and make some inquiries, and I'll comment back to y'all. Did you see the comment that Mr. Joshua Ebarb just put? He said, talk to East Baton Rouge Planning and Zoning. They must have that same thing.
Okay.
We'll do that. Thank you, Joshua.
All right. Thank you, sir.
So is there anything else tonight?
Yeah. Just one more thing under this item. Yeah, I don't know what hand. I'm back on the cellular now because the Wi-Fi is on me. just a brief, with the Gravity 5 of the Gravity 8 meeting we had the other night, that I know is in terms we were talking about doing the tax districts per the new development, in order to cover the drainage and possibly the roads, but primarily the drainage, just for those individual neighborhood developments, future developments. They said that Ascension has something like that in place. So we're going to get, you have to bring it to the state, to the legislature to get them to pass it through. But I'm actually going to get a copy of that, and we're going to look to see how they laid it out, and we can tweak it however we like. It certainly can be done, and there's a few little things, whether we start it at the point of when the house is purchased, or but you get the developer into the agreement, and then once that particular house is homesteaded per se, then the fee is paid in perpetuity, and we can determine how much, how many meals we wanted to apply, or the fee itself, how I want to do that. But I'm going to get their ordinance and see how they laid it out. We don't have to reinvent the wheel here. We can do we can just get theirs and tweak it and copycat it and send it over ourselves. But that was just a little, and he'd also let us know that, because of what's going on in Ascension with they're just not building at all. He just said, look, they're coming, they're looking, and they're coming here. They're going to come here. So, there's going to be a lot of development because of their inability to develop there for the next probably 6 months at this point. So, we need to get ahead of it as fast as we can. But so I'm actively trying to get that ordinance, so we can at least get it to the legislature as fast as we can. So, anyway, that's where I'm at. Anything else?
I don't believe.
All right. Item 4, any other business? Anything y'all are thinking of bringing forward? Anyone on the council, in the audience? Anybody? Okay. That's it, guys. Motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
All right. Motion by Mr. King, second by Mr. Talbert. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. This meeting's adjourned.
Next week.